My name is Ernest Kirkwood. Welcome to my kitchen. What I'm gonna make today is a pot roast with potatoes, onions, and carrots, and it will be prepared in an InstaPot. This is the InstaPot. I chose a pot roast because it's one of my favorite dishes to do with the InstaPot, and it's also one of the favorite dishes that my mom used to do from scratch when I was a kid. That's what you're going to experience today. Goes in like this, and I don't have a problem with wedging it down because as it cooks, it shrinks. And this morning, I rubbed it down. Onion powder, garlic powder, pepper, a little bit of salt, oregano. What it is it's a wood-fired garlic and smoke flavored. And so I put it all together, and as you can see, I rubbed it down real good on both sides. I like seasoning, I like heat, and I like taste. Okay, I am going to put this in. To me, it is so simple and so easy, right? Now, I'm not trying to cook this. I just want to sear it. It's almost, you know what? Searing is almost like shocking. You go. I was born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas. I left Kansas City when I was 17. It also it seals the meat. Yeah. I went into the Marine Corps and came out to California, was stationed at San Diego. From there, I went through boot camp, ITR, stationed over at Okinawa. Was on Okinawa for, I don't know, a year and a half, a couple of years. You can smell it. It smells good. Came back to the States, but I ended up hanging out with some guys. Ended up one weekend, we committed some felonies, personal felonies. That's what meat looks like when it's seared. And got arrested. As a result of that, I went to prison with a 10-to-life sentence for assaulted robberies, and did 9 years, a little over 9 years, and got out. And so I said, well, you know what, I'm coming to San Francisco. So I was paroled to San Francisco. And as an extra and a surprise, ta-da! That is a pineapple rum cake. I stayed out 10 years and committed 2 murders and 1 attempt, and received a life sentence, 27 to life, and went back to prison. So that happened in 1982. I had really good people in my life the 10 years I was out. You know, I was, in looking back on it, I was the only knucklehead. I was totally clueless. You know, I had a lot of things that, as a person, as a child, as a teenager, that I was exposed to, that really set me up to be the person that I was during that period of time. Right? Honestly, it was very, very interesting because I went to prison, and when I went to prison the first time, I went behind a lot of violence. Even then, I had enough sense to know, dude, something's wrong, because I knew that what I did was wrong, and then people didn't have it coming, and so I didn't know how to sort it out because I'm in San Quentin. This is the 60s, you don't go into a group or talk to a person and talk about sexual abuse, or physical abuse. I mean, this is San Quentin. I think my saving grace was that because of my violence, they put me in a group therapy. Nothing happened in group therapy because, like I said, this is San Quentin in the 60s. Ain't nobody talking about nothing. Everybody's trying to be that person. Ain't nobody trying to put themselves in a position to be victimized or talked about or whatever. My therapist was a guy named Lou Amoroso. Really, really neat guy. And I was in his group for, about a year or so. And he called me in. He said, you know what? I'm gonna duck at you in so we can have a talk. I said, okay. He said, you know what? I was going through your central file. And his exact words were, what you did was effed up. Really, And so we talked, and so he says, here's the thing. If you want to talk about it, truthfully, if you want to talk about it, I will not write about anything you share with me. And during that period, that was big stuff. And so there I was faced with really my first major decision. Do I trust him and tell him the truth, or do I continue to hold it in? I believed him, and we talked about it. As a result, when I left prison, I felt that I had really addressed my issues with violence and my penchant for violence. And it wasn't until I did the murders that I realized that I hadn't. And I also realized that I had intellectualized my penchant for violence, okay? But I had not touched the emotional part of that. I knew it was wrong. I knew them people didn't have it coming, in that part of it, and I regretted that. But I did not even look at the emotional part of that. Okay, where did that come from? Why did you enjoy doing that? What brought that about? What is that about? What happens is that when you sear it, sticks to the skillet. I would do this, and then I would take a broth or like white wine to deglaze it, break it up, and pour it in the pot. Go through the whole thing with the trial. They initially took it as a capital case, capital murder. It was a hung jury, and there was one older white gentleman. They could not sway him. He saved my life. We was out for weeks. They could not sway him. He said, no. I went in with a life sentence, and number one, I knew I was going to do a lot of time. Secondly, I knew I was going to get out of prison. Thirdly, My concern was staying alive to get out of prison. Yeah, this is rosemary, and I got it from the bush, a half a block from here. It's a whole half a block of it. It grows wild, you know, and I'll just pick some, come in, wash it off, and I'll go over in the garden over by 890 and get some thyme. That is the main seasoning that goes into it. I took and I add this chicken broth. I'm going to leave this in after it's done and add the vegetables with seasoning. And at the end, I'll add something to that to thicken it, to make a gravy. See? That is a 4-pound pot roast. This here, just throw it in. I realized that before I could get out of prison, I was going to have to articulate what I did, why I did it, and why I know it won't happen again. And when I made that realization, I had not a clue. But I also know I got enough time to figure it out. This will smell absolutely the smell of the rosemary and the thyme. And I says, okay, man, it's time to do the work. And whatever I come up with, that's what I'm gonna go with. If I find that I really am that person, that's what I'm gonna go with. I'll take a little bit of this. It's very aromatic, very close to rosemary, very close to rosemary. But if I find out that I'm not that person, that's what I'm gonna go with. Because one of the things that I come to think about is we're all born with an innate goodness, this ball of goodness, right? And in good situation, and good experiences, and love and nurturing, okay, that grows and blossoms, okay. On the other side of that, if you don't receive that nurturing and that guidance, okay, it becomes tainted. Layers and layers and layers upon negativity and garbage and whatever. And I said I needed to peel that onion. It's a layered thing, you know. And that's what I started doing. You know, and it became very, very interesting to me of how things that had happened to me growing up, how it impacted me as a young adult and as an adult. So that being the situation, because I look at myself and I reflect back on the many guys I've talked with. I don't think you could find an individual in prison. If you do, it's going to be very, very, very few that has not experienced childhood trauma, whether it be physical or sexual, right? And I came to understand the impact of trauma and what trauma can look like. Unprocessed trauma is lethal. What I'm gonna do with this dish is when my time is up, I will come over and I will hit this. And you can't go wrong because you cannot open this until all the pressure's out. This here is all this here, you cannot open it if there's any pressure at all. This is a very, very safe appliance, very safe. My mom taught me to cook. When I was a youngster, I used to watch her cook. My mom was a good cook. I got in trouble a couple of times with food. I got in serious trouble behind some pork chops. And what it was is that my mom had cooked a bunch of pork chops for dinner, and they were the end cut, right? Which means it has the bone, it has the fat, whatever. And they're crisp. I used to love the crispy part of the pork chop. Right? And I was in the kitchen doing something, and she had cooked them all up there on the platter. And I took a couple of pork chops off the top, and I just kind of like pitched them, right? And so I'm a kid, and to me, I'm being really slick, and ain't nobody gonna know it, right? So I did that. And at dinner time, they came in, we had a big dinner down at the table, everything's cool. And when they got ready to serve out the pork chops, here's this platter of pork chops, brown and crusty. The one's on top. And you take the first 2 or 3 off the top, the rest is bald. And that's the best way to describe it. It was bald, and like everybody looked right at me, okay? And Sarah, when she come up to visit, and Sarah baked everything, bread, rolls, fudge, cobbler, the whole shop. And she came up, and we had a pan that was about this long, about this wide, about this deep. And the only thing that was cooked in that pan was cobblers and cornbread, period. And Sarah came up, and she did this cobbler. And I like the dough, the dumplings in the cobbler, right? So she did the cobbler because later we're gonna have cobbler and ice cream, right? So it's my time to do the dishes. So I'm in the kitchen, the cobbler's over on the draining board, okay. So I take my little spoon and I take the spoon and like I'm eating the peaches and the dumplings. So I'm a kid, it doesn't have a lettuce crust. It has a full crust on the top, right? So I'm getting the filling out of it, right? That evening, Mom breaks out the bowls, get the ice cream. Bring the cobbler out. My father took a spoon and got ready to dip the cobbler. He hit the crust and it just went to the bottom. It just went to the bottom. And he looked up and he took the spoon and went all the way across. I'd ate about this far all the way back, all the way across, and my father was pissed. He was pissed and he says, "Who did the dishes?" And everybody looked at me. Yeah. I also like smothered potatoes. Smothered potatoes cooked in cast iron skillet. And You can do a lot of things with potatoes. The way that I like to do them is I take Idaho potatoes, slice them, put them in the skillet. I have nails, right? And so I'll just do it like that. But the proper way to do it, you get this. See the little teeth on it? Okay. And what you do is you put it down like this. What you have to understand is that when I was coming up, and you can do the whole thing without danger of cutting your fingers, there was families and people cooked. You didn't have microwaves and all that. People cooked and they didn't measure nothing. They just knew. I think this is called a mandolin. And Sarah, she loved to bake. She would never use a mixer. And whenever she came to visit, she had her favorite spot of where she sat at the side of the table. And we had a pot. She did everything in that pot. And she had a favorite wooden spoon, okay? If she did fudge, she would have my father go out to my grandfather's, because my grandfather had this really huge walnut tree. And up in the attic, he always had walnuts up there drying out and stuff, right? She would take a red brick and a ball peen hammer and sit there with that brick in her lap and break all them walnuts up and take and get the walnuts out to make fudge. She would not buy them. The relationships that I had made and the people I've come to know and relate to and live with, the 10 years that I was out between my first incarceration and my second incarceration. I'm still pretty much in touch with them. Also, while I was out, I had a son, Kisu. He happened. He was born in 1972. Okay, I got out in 71. He was born in 72. When my son was about 18 months, almost 2 years old, I took custody of him and started raising him. And so I started cooking for me and him, you know, and so I enjoy doing it. You know. I clean as I go. He was 10 years old, you know, when I left. I was able to maintain a relationship with him. Also, I was in the military. And I used to pride myself on saying that other than cycling once a month and having a baby, I can do anything a woman can do. Because I could cook, I could sew, I could iron. You know, that's just the way I was raised. I'm a certified old man, okay? And I'm really, you know what, I ain't lying, I'm really amazed at, okay, so that being that, what is happening today in society with our young people. The senior citizens in this building of different ethnicities, all right, share their history, their background with a youngster in school and have the youngsters share their little short history, you know. I turn the heat on about medium. It's very meaningful. It's very meaningful because so many people, so many young kids, they don't even know their own history or their mother's history or their father's history, you know, let alone, okay, here's this black kid over there. They don't know nothing about the Asian. or the Hispanic, you know, because we're different cultures. We're brought up different. We have different experiences. What I'll do is I'll get the oil really, really hot, because it will be like really hot, but once I put these cold potatoes, these moist potatoes in there, it's gonna go down. And if you put meat or anything, if you put it in oil that is not the right temperature, it'll get soggy before it's even cooked. Okay, see this here? It's at 51. 4 minutes ago, it came up to temperature. It can do some good, okay, to be supportive, you know what I mean, and talk to the kid. You know, I know just enough about trauma to know that trauma can be very dangerous. I mean, you don't want to deal with somebody about trauma unless you know what the hell you're doing, okay? And if you take him there, you can't leave him. You got to bring him back. Not so much what trauma does, but what trauma does to your inside. You know, it makes you who you are. You know what they say, it's okay not to be okay. Just a little bit of salt, pepper, a little bit of paprika. And I cover them as I'm cooking them, because, as you know, potatoes contain a lot of water. And as they soften, I take my spatula and I break them up, right? And I cook them. When they get all done to the consistency that I like, what I'll do is I'll turn the fire all the way up, and I'll scorch the bottom layer. I scorch the bottom layer and then stir it into the potatoes.
The Beard looking to one-up his MVP runner-up season, and with a new superstar partner by his side. Mission tonight for James Harden and the Rockets: remain unbeaten in the preseason.
Plants represent life. And if you take care of them and look after them, they will thrive. And if you neglect them, they will die. It's the same with life. It's the same with relationships. If you're in a relationship and you put work in on that relationship and you care about that relationship will thrive. I graduated out of the city college. This was taken downstairs on the patio. This and this was taken when I completed 890 after I got out. What I figured out is the first time I did it, The pot roast came out really great. The veggies were mush, okay? So I said, oh, wow, okay, so it's got to be something different. And it took me a couple of times, but what happens, as you'll see today, at the conclusion of that 55 minutes, I will release the steam. Now, it took me a couple of times to realize there's a difference in cooking it for, like, say, 55 minutes and letting the pressure and heat dissipate on its own, as opposed to, okay, 55 minutes is up. Big difference, you know. And so, yeah, so I'll do it for 55 minutes, and as soon as that 55 minutes is up, I'll release everything off of it. Add the veggies and do the veggies like 4 or 5 minutes. And what happens is that the pot roast is super tender, and so the veggies are still firm. They're done, but they're firm. I'm blessed to still be in contact with my son, my grandkids, and pretty much the people that I had established relationships with the 10 years I was out. It's a blessing. It's a blessing because there are so many people that have did less than me and suffered way more than me, you know, and don't have anybody, you know, to look toward concern and love and someone that cares about you. You know, I have people in my life that care about me. I moved into this apartment in January 2013. I had been released from Soledad State Prison in January of 2012. When I was paroled, I had a couple of things that I wanted to do, but I didn't have a whole bunch of plans. But I definitely knew what I wasn't gonna do, right? You know, and knowing that, I felt that I was gonna be all right and that I was gonna be all right, you know, and here we are 10 years later and I'm all right. So, okay, so, This is the finished product. It is pot roast with potatoes, onions, and carrot. This here, smell that.
Very fresh.
Yeah, it grows wild. And if you, as the cinematographer, if you want to be a billionaire, create a lens that smells.